All right, my friend. Good morning. Check this out, man. We stayed at this lakeside cabin last night and just had a great morning run. And today, May 1st, 2026, I brought this book with me on this road trip. Just couldn't love this book more. In 1957, the social psychologist Milton Rockich gathered three psychiatric patients to live together in Ypsilanti State Hospital in Michigan. Each of the patients believed he was Jesus Christ, since at least two of them had to be wrong. Rockich wondered how they would process this idea. They were Protestants. In a famous 17th century case, a fellow named Simon Moring was sent to a madhouse for making the same claim. There he met another Jesus and was so struck with the folly of his companion that he acknowledged his own. Unfortunately, he subsequently reverted to his original belief and, like Jesus, ended up being killed, in this case, burned at the stake for blasphemy. No one was burned in Ypsilanti. One patient, like Moring, relinquished his belief. The second saw the others as mentally ill, but not himself, and the third managed to dodge the issue completely. So in this case, 2 out of the 3 patients managed to hang on to a self-image at odds with reality. The disconnect may be less extreme, but the same could be said to be true even of many of us who don't believe we can walk on water. If we probed, or in many cases simply bothered to pay attention, most of us would notice that our self-image and the more objective image that others have of us are not quite in sync. By the time we were 2, most of us had a sense of ourselves as social agents. Around the time we learned that diapers are not a desirable fashion statement, we began to actively engage with adults to construct visions of our own past experiences. By kindergarten, we were able to do that without adult help. But we had also learned that people's behavior is motivated by their desires and beliefs. From that time onward, we've had to reconcile the person we would like to be with the person whose thoughts and actions we live with each moment of every day. I've talked a lot about how research psychologists reject much of Freudian theory, but one idea Freudian therapists and experimental psychologists agree on today is that our ego fights fiercely to defend its honor. This agreement is a relatively recent development. For many decades, research psychologists thought of people as detached observers who assess events and then apply reason to discover truth and decipher the nature of the social world. We were said to gather data on ourselves and to build our self-images based on generally good and accurate inferences. In that traditional view, a well-adjusted person was thought to be like a scientist of the self, whereas an individual whose self-image was clouded by illusion was regarded as vulnerable to, if not already a victim of, mental illness. Today, we know that the opposite is closer to the truth. Normal and healthy individuals, students, professors, engineers, lieutenant colonels, doctors, business executives, tend to think of themselves as not just competent but proficient, even if they aren't. I've talked a lot about how research psychologists reject much of Freudian theory, but one idea Freudian therapists and experimental psychologists agree on today is that our ego fights fiercely to defend its honor. This agreement is a relatively recent development. For many decades, research psychologists thought of people as detached observers who assess events and then apply reason to discover truth and decipher the nature of the social world. We were said to gather data on ourselves and to build our self-images based on generally good and accurate inferences. In that traditional view, a well-adjusted person was thought to be like a scientist of the self, whereas an individual whose self-image was clouded by illusion was regarded as vulnerable to, if not already a victim of, mental illness. Today, we know that the opposite is closer to the truth. Normal and healthy individuals, students, professors, engineers, lieutenant colonels, doctors, business executives, tend to think of themselves as not just competent but proficient, even if they aren't. Doesn't the business executive, noting that her department keeps missing its numbers, question her own abilities? Or the lieutenant colonel, noting that he can't seem to shed that prefix, wonder whether he's fit to be a colonel? How do we convince ourselves that we've got talent and that when the promotion goes to the other guy, it's only because the boss was misguided? As the psychologist Jonas had it put it, there are two ways to get at the truth: the way of the scientist and the way of the lawyer. Scientists gather evidence, look for regularities from theories explaining their observations, and test them. Attorneys begin with the conclusion they want to convince others of and then seek evidence that supports it, while also attempting to discredit evidence that doesn't. The human mind is designed to be both a scientist and an attorney, both a conscious seeker of objective truth and an unconscious, impassioned advocate for what we want to believe. Together, these approaches via to create our worldview. Believing in what you desire to be true and then seeking evidence to justify it doesn't seem to be the best approach to everyday decisions. For example, if you are at the races, it is rational to bet on the horse you believe is fastest. But it doesn't make sense to believe a horse is fastest because you bet on it. Similarly, it makes sense to choose a job you believe is appealing, but it's irrational to believe a job is appealing because you've accepted the offer. Still, even though in each case the latter approach doesn't make rational sense, it is the irrational choice that would probably make you happier. And the mind generally seems to opt for happy. In both these instances, the research indicates it is the latter choice that people are likely to make. The causal arrow in human thought processes consistently tends to point from belief to evidence, not vice versa. From belief to evidence. That's right. Humans, we're all like this. As it turns out, the brain is a decent scientist but an absolutely outstanding lawyer. The result is that in the struggle to fashion a coherent, convincing view of ourselves and the rest of the world, it is the impassionate advocate that usually wins over the truth seeker. We've seen in earlier chapters how the unconscious mind is a master at using limited data to construct a version of the world that appears realistic and complete to its partner, the conscious mind. Visual perception, memory, and even emotion are all constructs made of a mix of raw, incomplete, and sometimes conflicting data. We use the same kind of creative process to generate our self-image. When we paint our picture of self, our attorney-like unconscious blends fact and illusion, exaggerating our strengths, minimizing our weaknesses, creating a virtually Picasso-esque series of distortions in which some parts have been blown up to enormous size, the parts we like, and the others shrunk to near invisibility. The rational scientists of our conscious minds then innocently admire the self-portrait, believing it to be a work of photographic accuracy. Okay, I definitely have that problem. I think big of myself, bigger than I actually am. I'm aware of that, and I enjoy being delusional. I guess. Am I delusional? Thinking or believing myself being delusional? Probably. Okay, I'm going to just chill here. It's a great day, man. Thanks for being here and reading with me. I'm loving this moment. The sun feels so warm yet not harsh. I can just be out here basking in the morning sun. It feels so healthy and pleasant. Okay, see you in my next video. Bye bye. 停止录像。